I discovered our wedding photos were AI generated to hide her real past. It felt like the floor just dropped out from under me, like I was standing on solid ground one second and then plummeting into some black, bottomless pit the next. I've been replaying that moment, that exact second, over and over, trying to pinpoint where the reality I knew warped and twisted into this horrifying, fabricated landscape. It all started with a simple attic cleaning. Sarah, my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my kids, had been wanting to clear out some old boxes. We'd been married 10 years, lived in this house for 8, and the attic, well, it was a black hole of forgotten Christmas decorations and outgrown baby clothes. I was up there, sweating, dust motes dancing in the single beam of light from the bare bulb, when I stumbled upon a battered old trunk. It wasn't one of ours. It looked older somehow, heavier. Curiosity, I guess, is a dangerous thing. Before we dive any deeper into this mess, if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if you're feeling that knot in your stomach right along with me, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it helps keep these stories coming, and you won't want to miss how this all plays out. And if you're feeling it, give this a like, share it with someone who might understand, and definitely drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I need to know I'm not completely alone in this. The trunk was locked, but the latch was rusted through, and with a bit of a tug, it gave way with a groan that echoed through the silence. Inside, it wasn't what I expected. No old journals, no faded love letters. It was filled with photo albums, thick and heavy, the kind you don't see anymore. I pulled one out. The cover was a deep, worn leather, blank. I opened it, and my breath hitched. The first photo was us, a wedding photo. But it wasn't our wedding photo. It was different. The venue was a grand old estate, the kind you see in movies, not the simple country club we'd chosen. Sarah was wearing a different dress, a sweeping, ornate gown, and the groom wasn't me. He was a stranger. Dark hair, sharp jawline, a confident smile that was a million miles away from the nervous, slightly goofy grin I remembered from our actual wedding day. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This had to be a mistake, some kind of weird prank. I flipped the page. Another photo. Sarah, laughing, arm in arm with the same man. Another, a candid shot, them walking hand in hand on a beach I'd never been to with her. It was beautiful, a perfect sun-drenched scene. But it wasn't ours. I kept flipping, a cold dread creeping up my spine. Each page was a new snapshot of a life I didn't recognize. Sarah, younger, vibrant, but with a different man by her side. Always the same man. They looked happy, so incredibly happy.
There were photos of them in what looked like exotic locations: Paris, Rome, a snowy mountain range. Places we'd never talked about going, places that felt impossibly glamorous compared to our comfortable suburban existence. And then I found it. Tucked away at the back of this album, a single loose photograph. It was a picture of Sarah and me on our wedding day. My stomach clenched. This one was real. I remembered the scratchy lace of her veil, the scent of roses, the nervous tremor in her hand as she said her vows, but something was off. Her eyes, they seemed a little too bright. Her smile a little too perfectly framed, and the background, the familiar faces of our friends and family blurred behind us. It looked flat. Like a poorly photoshopped image. I grabbed another album. This one was titled in elegant script, Sarah and name I didn't recognize, Forever. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I flipped through it, the same montage of a life I'd never known. Weddings, anniversaries, holidays, vacations, a seemingly endless stream of perfect moments with this other man. Then another loose photo. This one was Sarah, pregnant. My breath caught. She looked radiant, glowing, but she was with him, not me. The stark reality of it slammed into me. This wasn't just some forgotten keepsake. This was evidence of what I didn't know yet, but it was damning. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the Sarah I knew, the Sarah who struggled to parallel park, who sang off-key in the car, who cried during sappy commercials, with the woman in these photographs, who seemed to inhabit a world of effortless grace and grand adventures. How could this be? Did she have a secret life? Another marriage? The thought was ridiculous, absurd. We'd met in college, been together for 15 years. There was no gap, no lost time, no mystery man. Or so I thought. I sat there,
Amidst the dust and forgotten memories, the albums spread around me like a grotesque diorama of betrayal. The light bulb above flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock my confusion. I picked up my phone, my fingers numb. Who do I even call? The police? What would I say? My wife apparently had a whole other life before me, and there are pictures to prove it, but I don't know what it means. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Sarah's name. I couldn't. Not yet. The sheer disbelief was a physical weight in my chest. I needed to understand. I started digging. Not through the trunk anymore, but through Sarah's digital life. Her laptop, her phone. I'd always respected her privacy, never felt the need to snoop. Now it felt like a desperate, primal urge. I found her old cloud storage account, a place she kept backups of photos and documents. I logged in, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I searched for her maiden name, for old usernames, for anything that might lead me to the past these albums hinted at.
It took me hours, a blur of forgotten passwords and security questions. And then I found it. A folder, buried deep, labeled simply, Pre-Mike. Mike. That was the name of the stranger in the photos. I opened the folder. It was a treasure trove of digital images, photos, videos, documents, and there, in stark, undeniable clarity, were the same images from the albums, but in higher resolution, more of them. Sarah laughing with Mike. Sarah kissing Mike. Sarah pregnant with Mike. But it wasn't just that. There were also documents, contracts, legal papers. It took me a while to piece it together, my brain struggling to process the information. There was a wedding certificate, not ours. Sarah and Mike, dated 5 years before I met her. And then there was a divorce decree from the same marriage. It was a whole life, neatly packaged, documented, and apparently erased. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. I kept scrolling through the Pre-Mike folder, my fingers growing colder with each click. I found a folder labeled Wedding Album Final. This was different. This wasn't a collection of snapshots. It was a meticulously organized set of images, and beneath them, detailed metadata. I opened a picture. It was the wedding photo I'd seen in the trunk, the one with the grand estate. The metadata listed the photographer, the date, and then something that made my blood run cold. AI enhancement, high. I opened another. AI generation, background refinement. Another. AI compositing, groom replacement. The implications hit me like a physical blow. AI generation, groom replacement. They hadn't just enhanced the photos, they had created them. The man in the pictures with Sarah, the husband I saw in those albums, wasn't real. Or at least, he wasn't her husband in the way I was seeing it. I started cross-referencing the dates on these AI-generated photos with the timeline of her marriage to Mike. They overlapped. And then, a terrifying thought began to form. What if the wedding album I'd found wasn't just a cover-up for a past marriage? What if it was a cover-up for something even more sinister? I went back to the loose wedding photo of Sarah and me, the one that looked a little too perfect. I compared it to other photos of myself from that period. My suit was the same. The venue was the same. The people in the background were the same. But Sarah, her face, there was something subtle, a sharpness to her cheekbones, a certain luminescence in her eyes that felt artificial. I zoomed in, my screen blurring with the pixels. It was undeniable. Her smile was too symmetrical. The way the light hit her skin was too flawless. It was too perfect. The same perfection I saw in the AI-generated photos of her with Mike. My mind reeled. If our wedding photos were AI-generated, why? To hide what? Was she a different person entirely? Was I a different person in those photos? Did she somehow alter me? The sheer scale of deception was overwhelming. I sat back, my head spinning. 10 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built on what? A foundation of digital lies? I looked at a picture of our kids on my phone, their innocent faces staring back at me. Were they real? Was anything real? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had to know. I had to see the originals. I went back to the trunk, my hands fumbling with the albums. I started looking for the original photos, the ones that hadn't been doctored. But there weren't any, just the AI-generated versions. It was like the real memories had been meticulously scrubbed and replaced. And then I remembered something. Sarah had a professional photographer for our wedding, a guy named David Chen. He had a studio downtown. I'd seen his name on the back of a physical print from our wedding, a small detail I'd barely registered at the time. I pulled up David Chen's website. It was slick, modern, filled with stunning wedding photography. I scrolled through his portfolio, looking for any clue, any hint. And then I saw it, a section labeled AI Integrated Services. My heart sank. He was offering AI enhancement. It was common now, I knew that, but Sarah had never mentioned anything about it for our wedding. She was always so particular, so sentimental about those photos. Why would she have them altered and so drastically without telling me? I scrolled further, my eyes scanning the text. Transform your memories into perfect moments. Our advanced AI technology can remove imperfections, enhance features, and even create entirely new elements for a truly breathtaking result. Breathtaking, that was one word for it. My blood ran cold as I realized the chilling implication. Sarah hadn't just been hiding a past marriage. She had actively and meticulously erased it, using advanced technology to create a new, fabricated history, a history that included me, but a history that was built on a lie from the very beginning. The wedding photos, the ones that were supposed to be the testament to our love, the beginning of our shared life, were nothing more than an elaborate digital illusion. I looked at the wedding albums again, the perfect smiles, the dreamlike settings, and a profound sense of isolation washed over me. I had married a ghost, a phantom, and the life we had built together was a meticulously crafted masterpiece of deception. The man I was in those photos, the husband who had pledged his life to Sarah, was a digital construct, an actor in a play he didn't even know he was performing. And I didn't know how much of any of it was real anymore. The silence of the attic pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating, and I felt a primal scream building in my throat, a scream for the truth, for the life that had been stolen from me, for the woman I thought I knew, who had turned out to be a stranger wearing a familiar face.
The trunk sat there, a silent accomplice to a crime I was only just beginning to comprehend, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was just the beginning of unraveling a truth far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The silence in the attic wasn't just an absence of sound, it was a suffocating weight, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I sat there, surrounded by the ghosts of a life I thought I knew, each AI-generated smile a fresh stab wound. My mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Anger simmered, hot and corrosive, but beneath it, a chilling dread pulsed, a constant reminder of how utterly I had been deceived. Love for Sarah, the Sarah I thought I knew, warred with the cold, hard reality of the stranger I was discovering. It was a dizzying, nauseating mix that threatened to pull me under. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the full scope of this manufactured existence. I found myself back at Sarah's laptop, its screen still aglow with the evidence of her duplicity. The pre-mic folder was a gaping maw, and I felt a morbid compulsion to dive back in. I scrolled through more documents, more photos. There were vacation pictures, idyllic shots of Sarah and Mike on a beach, him with his arm around her, her head nestled on his shoulder. They looked so content, so complete. It was a brutal contrast to the strained, sometimes weary, but always real moments I'd captured with Sarah in our own life. The AI-generated perfection of their past was a cruel mockery of the messy, beautiful reality of ours. I kept digging, my fingers flying across the keyboard, fueled by a desperate need to find a crack in the facade, something that explained why. And then I found it. Deep within a subfolder labeled Legal, buried amongst scanned contracts and financial statements, was a file that made my blood run cold. It was a police report, dated 3 years before I met Sarah. The incident was listed as a domestic dispute, assault. The victim was listed as Sarah Miller. The perpetrator? A name I recognized with a sickening lurch. Michael Thorne. Mike. The man from the photos. The man whose digital ghost had been Sarah's supposed husband. My hands trembled as I opened the scanned document. The details were sparse, almost sanitized, but the core of it was horrifying. A violent argument, property damage. Sarah had pressed charges. Thorne had been arrested. The report detailed a history of abuse. It painted a picture of a relationship that was far from the blissful romance the fabricated wedding photos suggested. My mind reeled. Was this what Sarah was trying to escape? Was this the hidden trauma she was so desperate to bury that she resorted to creating an entirely new life? Digitally. But the police report wasn't the end of it. There was another file in that same folder. A scanned legal document. A restraining order, filed by Sarah Miller against Michael Thorne. Granted.
This wasn't just a bad breakup. This was a desperate bid for safety. The dates aligned perfectly with the timeline of the fabricated wedding photos. It hit me with the force of a tidal wave. The AI-generated photos weren't just a cover-up for a past marriage. They were a deliberate, calculated attempt to erase a traumatic, abusive past, to create a narrative where she was the beloved bride, not the victim of violence. I felt a strange mixture of relief and renewed confusion. Relief that the happy couple in the photos wasn't some idyllic love story I'd been excluded from, but a desperate fabrication to mask a dark reality. But confusion gnawed at me. If she was so terrified of Mike, why create such elaborate digital lies? Why not just start fresh, anonymously? Why involve me? Why build our entire life together on a foundation of digital ghosts and fabricated memories? I continued sifting through the pre-Mike folder, a growing sense of unease settling in my gut. I found videos, home videos, grainy and pixelated from what looked like a party. Sarah was there, laughing, younger, happier. And Mike was there too. He was charismatic, undeniably so. But there was something in his eyes, a possessiveness, a volatile edge that sent a shiver down my spine. He'd grab her, pull her close, whisper something in her ear that made her laugh nervously. It was a subtle dance of control and affection, and it was terrifying to witness. Then, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach churn. A series of emails, from Mike to Sarah. The tone was often affectionate, sometimes pleading, but then it would shift, laced with anger and thinly veiled threats. "You can't just disappear, Sarah. We had something. You owe me." Or, "Don't think I'll forget you. I'll find you, no matter what." These weren't the ramblings of a scorned lover. They were the words of a man who refused to let go, a man who, by all accounts, was dangerous. My mind raced. The restraining order, the police report, the threatening emails. Sarah had every reason to be terrified. But the wedding photos, our wedding photos, the AI-generated perfection, it was a profound betrayal, not just of our present, but of the very beginning of our supposed journey. Why replace me in those fabricated memories? Why not just use a generic groom or simply show her alone in a beautiful setting? Why put me into a manufactured past that was already populated with another man? I looked back at the AI-generated wedding photo of Sarah and me, the one that looked so impossibly perfect. I zoomed in on my own face. It was me, unmistakably. My eyes, my nose, my smile. But there was something off. A subtle smoothness, a lack of the slight imperfections that made me, me. The way I stood, the confidence in my posture, it was a slightly more idealized version of myself. The AI hadn't just replaced Mike, it had enhanced me too. It had woven me into her fabricated past, making me complicit in her elaborate lie from the very start. The implications were staggering. Sarah hadn't just been running from Mike, she had been building a new reality, a fortress of digital lies, and I was an unwitting pawn in her construction. She had used me, her real husband, to create a believable illusion, a perfect couple in a fabricated past that conveniently erased the abusive ex-husband.
It was a manipulation of the highest order, and the sheer audacity of it left me breathless. I started looking for more details about David Chen, the photographer. I found his studio's website again. This time I delved deeper, looking for testimonials, for any hint of his involvement in more unusual projects. His site boasted of bespoke digital artistry and memory restoration. It felt corporate, slick, and completely devoid of any ethical warning signs. I found a contact form, and without thinking, I typed out a message. My fingers trembled as I wrote, "I believe my wedding photos taken by your studio on date of my wedding may have undergone significant digital alteration, including the replacement of the groom. I urgently need to understand the process and potentially see original, unaltered images. Please advise on next steps." I hit send, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. It felt like I was setting off a bomb, but I had no choice. Hours passed. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a spectacle that felt utterly disconnected from the darkness I was experiencing. I paced the living room, the silence punctuated only by the ticking of the clock and the frantic beat of my own heart. I couldn't sit still. The thought of Sarah, of our children, was a constant ache. Were they innocent bystanders in this elaborate deception, or were they part of the plan? The sheer betrayal ran so deep that I found myself questioning everything, every shared laugh, every whispered "I love you," every moment of intimacy. Was any of it real? My phone buzzed, jolting me from my anxious trance. A notification from David Chen's studio, an email. My breath hitched. I opened it, my eyes scanning the words. It was polite, professional, and infuriatingly vague. "Dear client, thank you for your inquiry. Our studio utilizes advanced digital enhancement techniques to create the perfect wedding album for our clients, as agreed upon during consultation. All final images are provided with client approval. For further clarification on our services, please refer to our terms and conditions, which were electronically signed by the contracting party. Due to client privacy agreements, we are unable to discuss specific details of past projects or provide original unedited files." Electronically signed by the contracting party. That means Sarah. She had signed off on this. She had approved the fabrication.
She had actively chosen to build our entire life together on a foundation of lies, using my image to mask her terrifying past. The relief I'd felt earlier evaporated, replaced by a raw, searing anger. She hadn't just been a victim, she had become an architect of deception. And then another email popped up. This one wasn't from David Chen. It was from Sarah's personal email account, which I had inadvertently left open on her laptop. The subject line was cryptic: "Urgent, proof of deletion." My hands shook as I opened it. It was a single sentence, stark and chilling. "All digital records of Mike Thorne and our previous life have been permanently erased. The wedding album, as agreed, is our new beginning." The wedding album, she meant the AI-generated one. The new beginning, she meant with me as the unwitting groom. A cold dread washed over me. She hadn't just erased Mike, she had erased her entire self, her past trauma, her pain, and replaced it with a digitally perfect, fabricated version of happiness, with me as the star. And she had done it all without my knowledge, without my consent. I looked at the wedding photo again, my own face staring back at me, smiling, happy, oblivious. I was a lie. We were a lie. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, was a stranger who had masterfully constructed a new identity, and I was the essential, albeit fabricated, supporting character. I wanted to scream, to shatter something, anything, to break the suffocating illusion. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because a single terrifying question clawed at me, a question that eclipsed even the betrayal. If she could create an entire fabricated past, what else was she capable of hiding? What other lies were buried beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life? The floor dropped out from under me again, this time into an even deeper, darker abyss of uncertainty and fear. The attic dust motes danced in the weak beam of my phone's flashlight, oblivious to the seismic shift happening inside me. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all.
She'd taken my face, smoothed out my edges, and slotted me into a fabricated memory of a wedding that never happened with a man who was supposed to be my enemy in her past. It wasn't just about erasing Mike. It was about actively constructing a new history where I was the protagonist, a Trojan horse of manufactured happiness. The relief I'd felt, the flicker of understanding that she was running from something terrifying, was being choked out by the sheer cold calculation of it. She hadn't just built a fortress, she'd built a whole damn city, and I was the unsuspecting mayor. I scrolled back to the scanned police report, the grainy details, the terse descriptions of violence. Michael Thorne. The name echoed in the silence, a phantom limb of her pain. And the restraining order, the stark legal decree separating her from him. These were real. These were visceral.
And yet, she'd countered them with pixels and algorithms. It was a chilling testament to her fear, yes, but also to her resourcefulness. A terrifying kind of genius. My mind, usually a steady vessel, felt like it was capsizing in a storm of disbelief and hurt. How could the woman I shared late-night talks with, the woman whose hand fit so perfectly in mine, the woman who'd birthed our children, be capable of such elaborate, systematic deception? The kids. They were asleep upstairs, oblivious to the foundation of their reality crumbling beneath them. Were they conceived in truth? Were their births real, or just another meticulously crafted element of her grand design? The paranoia was already starting to creep in, a venomous vine wrapping around my thoughts. Every memory, every shared milestone, every intimate confession felt tainted, suspect. Did she look at me and see a placeholder, a tool? Or did she truly love me, even as she wove this intricate tapestry of lies around us? The thought that she might genuinely love me while simultaneously orchestrating this level of deception was the most bewildering part of all. It defied logic, defied everything I understood about human connection. I opened the email from Sarah's account again, the one confirming the permanent erasure. It was so clinical, so devoid of emotion, like a business transaction. All digital records permanently erased. Her previous life, her trauma, her very identity before me reduced to data points that could be wiped clean. And the wedding album as the new beginning. It was a sick kind of poetry. She hadn't just lied to me, she had curated a lie that included me, that required me to be there, perfect and unblemished, in a moment that was a fabrication. The AI hadn't just created a wedding, it had created a narrative, and I was now an actor in a play I hadn't auditioned for, playing a role I hadn't chosen. I sat back, the weight of it all crushing. The attic felt smaller, the air thicker. I thought about the wedding photos, the way she'd looked at me, radiant, happy. Was that happiness real? Or was it the exhilaration of finally pulling off the impossible, the performance of a lifetime? I remembered the subtle enhancements to my own image. The AI hadn't just pasted my face onto a stranger's body, it had subtly improved me, made me more photogenic, more confident, more husband-like. It was a grotesque form of gaslighting, not just on her part, but on the part of the technology she wielded. It had altered me, even if only digitally, to fit her narrative. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of traffic, a stark reminder of the normal world happening outside, a world I was suddenly unsure I belonged to. I needed to confront her. The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, a mix of fear and righteous anger. I couldn't let this fester. I couldn't let her continue living this lie, especially not with our children in the picture. But how? What would I say? Honey, I found out you hired a digital ghostwriter to create our wedding memories and erased your abusive ex-husband from existence with AI. It sounded insane, even to me. I closed Sarah's laptop, the screen going dark, taking with it the digital evidence of her betrayal. I stood up, my legs feeling heavy like they were made of lead. The attic stairs creaked under my weight as I descended, each step a conscious effort. The house was quiet. The children were asleep. The silence felt loaded, pregnant with unspoken truths. I walked into our bedroom,
the room we'd shared, the room where we'd built so many real memories. Or had we? I stood by the window, looking out at the darkened suburban street. Streetlights cast long, eerie shadows. The familiar houses, the manicured lawns, it all felt like a set dressing, a convincing facade for a reality far more complex and disturbing. I thought about the sheer effort involved, the consultations with David Chen, the meticulous selection of images, the hiring of the AI, the careful crafting of the narrative. It was a project of monumental scale, executed with unwavering focus. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, the kind that goes bone deep. I wanted to curl up and disappear. But the image of Mike Thorne, the phantom groom, flashed in my mind, followed by the sterile confirmation of Sarah's permanent erasure. This wasn't just a secret, it was a fundamental alteration of our shared history, a redefinition of our entire existence. I heard a faint stirring from the kids' room, a soft whimper, a rustle of blankets. My heart ached. They were the anchors in the storm, the only things I knew for sure, the tangible proof of our shared life, even if parts of that life were built on a digital lie. But even that thought was terrifying. If she could do this, what else was she hiding? What other aspects of our lives were carefully curated, digitally enhanced, or deliberately concealed? My mind drifted back to her confession, the whispered words about the fear, the need to escape. I understood that need. I had seen the raw vulnerability in her eyes sometimes, a fleeting shadow of pain that I'd always attributed to everyday stress. Now it made sense. She wasn't just running from a bad relationship, she was running for her life, and in doing so she had created a new one, a parallel reality where the monsters of her past couldn't touch her. But at what cost? The cost was me. The cost was our truth. The cost was the foundation of trust that I thought we had. It was a betrayal so profound, so all-encompassing, that it felt like a physical wound. I traced the lines of my own reflection in the dark glass of the window. I looked at the man who was supposed to be happy, the man who was supposed to be celebrating a beautiful, real union. Instead, I saw a ghost, a digital phantom inserted into a memory that was never mine. The anger was still there, a low, steady burn. But it was mingled with a deep, profound sadness. Sadness for the lost truth, for the shattered illusion, for the woman I thought I knew, who now felt like a stranger. I imagined her, going through the process, meticulously planning, carefully executing. Did she ever feel a pang of guilt? Did she ever hesitate, knowing she was manipulating me so deeply? Or was the fear so absolute, the need for safety so overwhelming, that it eclipsed all other considerations? I walked out of the bedroom, the floorboards creaking softly. I needed air. I needed to think. I went to the garage, the scent of oil and gasoline a welcome, uncomplicated smell. I sat in my car, the leather cool against my skin. The engine was silent, but the world outside was alive with its own rhythm. The problem wasn't just that she lied. The problem was how she lied. The sheer, chilling expertise, the willingness to rewrite reality itself. It wasn't a panicked mistake. It was a calculated, long-term strategy. And I, unknowingly, had played my part. I had been her willing accomplice in her own elaborate charade. The thought was nauseating. I thought about the children again. They deserved a real foundation. They deserved parents who weren't living a carefully constructed illusion. But how could I possibly explain this to Sarah? How could I confront her with evidence that pointed to her being a master manipulator, a digital architect of lies? Would she break down? Would she deny it? Would she accuse me of invading her privacy? The latter seemed likely. She had clearly gone to extreme lengths to protect her secrets. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Sarah. "Can you come up to the attic for a minute? I think I left something important up there." My heart leaped into my throat. The attic. She wanted to go back to the attic, the place where I'd uncovered her secret. Was this a trap? A test? Or was she, in some twisted way, ready to face what I'd found? The adrenaline surged again, pushing aside the exhaustion. This was it, the moment of reckoning, whether she knew it or not. I got out of the car and walked back into the house. The silence seemed even heavier now, charged with unspoken tension. I walked up the stairs to the attic, my footsteps echoing. She was already there, standing in the dim light, her silhouette framed by the small attic window. She looked ordinary, just Sarah, my wife, the mother of my children. But behind those familiar eyes, I knew, lurked a complexity I was only beginning to comprehend. "You found it, didn't you?" she said, her voice quiet, devoid of inflection. Not a question, but a statement.
She knew, or she suspected. I stopped a few feet away from her. The air crackled. Found what, Sarah? My voice was a low rumble, tighter than I intended. She turned fully towards me, her face illuminated by the weak light. There was no fear there, no panic, just a profound weariness, and something else, a flicker of defiance. The truth, she said.
The things you were looking for. My chest tightened. This was it. The confrontation. No more looking through digital files, no more piecing together fragments. This was the moment of truth, spoken aloud. The wedding photos, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The ones that aren't real. The ones where you replaced Mike. Her gaze didn't waver. He was going to kill me, Mike, she said, her voice taking on a hard edge. You saw the reports, the restraining order. He wouldn't stop. He wouldn't leave me alone. I had to disappear. I had to create a new life, a life where he couldn't find me, where he couldn't hurt me or our children. So you erased him? I asked, the words thick with accusation. You digitally amputated him from your past, and then you inserted me, my face, into his place in a wedding that never happened? The anger was boiling over now, a raw, searing heat. I didn't insert you, she countered, her voice rising slightly. I evolved. I became someone new, someone stronger, and I needed a believable present, a believable story. The AI, it helped. It made it perfect. And you were already there. You were already part of my real life, my real future. It was the most logical step. Logical? I choked out a laugh, a harsh, broken sound. Logical to build our entire marriage on a lie? To create a fake past that stars me as the groom in a wedding that never happened? What about me, Sarah? What about my memories, my trust? Your trust was always real, she said, her voice softening slightly, a desperate plea in her tone. My love for you is real. My love for our children is real. The life we have, that's real. The past was a necessary evil, a shield. I was so terrified, Alex, so utterly, completely terrified. I thought if I could build a perfect, unblemished narrative, a life so good, so happy, that the past would just fade away, become irrelevant. Irrelevant? I echoed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. My entire wedding day, the beginning of our journey, is irrelevant because it was a digital fabrication? Because you couldn't bear to have the ghost of an abusive ex-husband in the backdrop of your perfect AI-generated life? Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't spill over. They just shimmered, like trapped stars. It wasn't just a backdrop, she whispered. It was him. It was the constant reminder of what I'd escaped, of the danger I was still in. I couldn't have that. Not for me, not for our children. I needed a clean slate, a new beginning, as the email said. And you were the perfect addition to that new beginning. You were already my present, my future. It just made sense. It made sense to lie to me. My voice was a ragged gasp. To manipulate me into being part of your elaborate deception from the very start. To take my face and put it where his should have been, in a moment that never belonged to us. Did you ever consider how I would feel if I found out? She looked away, her gaze fixed on the dusty floorboards. I never thought you would find out, she confessed, her voice barely audible. I thought it was buried deep enough, that the perfect album, the perfect life would be enough. I never intended to hurt you, Alex. Never. It was always about survival, about protecting us. Protecting us? I took a step towards her, my voice raw with emotion. By creating a life built on a foundation of lies? By making me a character in your fabricated past? What kind of protection is that, Sarah? It's not protection. It's a cage. A gilded cage, maybe, but still a cage. She finally met my eyes, and the raw pain there was almost unbearable. And what was I supposed to do, Alex? She cried, the dam finally breaking, tears streaming down her face. Just live with the constant fear? Wait for him to find me again? This was the only way I knew how to be safe. to build something so perfect, so solid, that the past couldn't touch it. I was so scared, so alone. The anger began to ebb, replaced by a profound, crushing sadness. I saw not just the manipulator, but the victim, the survivor. But that didn't erase the betrayal. It didn't erase the fact that my reality had been tampered with, my memories rewritten. "I love you, Alex," she choked out, her voice thick with tears. "I love you more than anything. That part is real. Everything we have together, our children, that's real. I just wanted it to be safe, to be perfect. I made a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake in how I went about it. But the intention was always love, always protection." I looked at her, at the woman I had loved, the woman who had built this elaborate defense around herself, the woman who had used my image to create a shield. The man who had threatened her life was gone, or at least silenced, digitally. But the cost had been immense. It had cost us our truth. "I don't know if I can rebuild this, Sarah," I said, the words heavy, final. "I don't know if I can ever look at those photos again, or at you, and not see the lie, not wonder what else is hidden." She nodded, tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking. "I know," she whispered. "I understand. I broke it. I broke everything. But if you can, if there's anything left, I'll do anything, anything to make it right, to earn back your trust, to find a way back to the truth, to a real beginning." I stood there, in the silent, dusty attic, surrounded by the ghosts of a life that was both mine and not mine. The weight of her confession, the raw vulnerability in her eyes, was a heavy burden. There were no easy answers, no neat resolutions, just the shattered pieces of what we had, and the daunting, uncertain task of deciding if and how they could ever be put back together.
The cinematic sweep of the manufactured wedding photos had dissolved, leaving only the stark, brutal reality of two flawed humans, caught in the wreckage of a terrifying past and a complicated present. The silence in the attic was no longer just dust and shadows. It was the sound of a world irrevocably changed, a silent exhalation of a future yet to be forged from the ashes of deception and survival.